Albertson to the stage to present the Humanitarian of the Year Award.
So it's a funny thing, when Bruce and I first approached Howie to tell him that he had won the award, it had to have been a first, I think, because Howie protested that he didn't deserve it. He hadn't done anything for the Federation, he said, he hadn't done anything for the community, and so rather than discussing how wonderful it was that he had won the award, we actually had to spend the first few minutes convincing him that he should accept the award. So it was kind of an inauspicious beginning to a wonderful process. Howie is somebody who people, I think, know in very different ways. Most of the people who know him for his research, his brilliant research. To give you one snippet of what this man has done, you would say, Dainu, it's enough that he innovated a method for fighting Parkinson's to the extent that he has. But when you create a drug, you can't just go ahead then and give it to a human and try it out. The FDA is not going to be very happy about that. And if you give it to an animal, the animal may not respond the same way a human would. Howie developed a method by which you could actually, believe it or not, add human brain tissue to a mouse's brain so that he could test the drug and have a better understanding of how the drug would respond in a human system. How many people benefited from that? So, in one way, we know Howie as a brilliant innovator. Another way people know him is for his courage. Howie will probably speak more about that, but there are so many times in his life when he confronted opposition in terms of resistance to the research that he did, politics, all kinds of things where he could have taken the easier path. He could have said, I'll drop the research, I'll leave UNMC, I'll leave Omaha, I'll do something else. I don't need this, I don't deserve it, I won't deal with it. But he didn't. When Howie decides that something is correct, he goes to lengths that I don't know anybody else would match. He sticks to his guns and he pursues the path he truly, truly, fervently believes in. He has courage to match anybody I've ever met, and maybe then some. Maybe as much as anything else, and maybe this would be the biggest surprise for people who have seen him as an innovator and as a fighter, is that he also has this characteristic of love within him. Not only someone who loves his wonderful wife Bonnie, his children, now his grandchildren, but I think I saw it most powerfully when we had a very contentious shul synagogue board meeting. I'm sure none of you can relate to that, but it happened in our case, and people were fighting and yelling at each other, and it was very unpleasant. And Howie stood up to speak to everybody. Now, that by itself is not so remarkable. A lot of people would stand up and try and calm everybody down. I never told you this, Howie, but the thing that struck me the most when Howie stood up to speak was that there were tears in his eyes. This innovator, this fighter, this courageous man had tears in his eyes because the community that he loves so dearly was tearing itself apart. And when he spoke and people saw how emotional he was and how much he cared, they quieted down. Love also motivates a great deal of what he does. Recently, I was at the Omaha World Herald. Mike Kelly was incredibly nice to me to get me actually a speech that Howie had given. And in walked a reporter who I'd never met before, Steve Jordan, who apparently, according to Mike, does reporting on Warren Buffett. So Mike turns to Steve and he says, Steve, have you heard of Dr. Howard Gendleman? And he says, of course I know Dr. Howard Gendleman. And then he said, he's a treasure. And I couldn't agree more. So Howie, please come on.
So that was quite an introduction, but I have really one serious regret in that introduction. You didn't record it for my mother, so it's going to be a big problem. I'm sure you were talking about me, but I certainly hope so. But I think I am first extraordinarily humbled by this award. It's very different than anything that I'm used to, whether it be mentoring, research, education, or even fighting with our administration at the Med Center as we develop and grow. Occasionally with my wife, she was here, my partner, and really I owe a lot of this success to her. She's sitting here in the front row, so. She's certainly the hero of the two of us. She's the one who raised our children and certainly have done a tremendous amount for the community in so many different ways, and it would be at least another half an hour to an hour just to talk about her. Joel, you're a great friend. I'm really privileged, lucky, and more than speechless to listen to your words. To our community, our friends, our fellow scientists who are sitting in the audience, who's really been my watchguard, who's been with me, many of them for almost 25 years since I've been in Omaha, to the administration, and to the generations of this community that will follow us and we're building and celebrating today. But first, I really have a very difficult task to tell you a few stories, now aloud, for Lori has given me that privilege. Tell a few stories. Some are heart-wrenching and some are funny. But first I'd like to really acknowledge the three women that have really played an instrumental role. One, of course, I mentioned is my wife. The other are two that you wouldn't expect. One is Elizabeth Taylor, and the other is Sharon Stone. So you're going to ask, how would this little guy from Omaha, Nebraska, have anything to do with Sharon Stone and Elizabeth Taylor? It turns out that my first research grant, was given as part of the Rock Hudson Endowment that Elizabeth Taylor established, and I got to meet Elizabeth Taylor at a dinner with Sharon Stone, and we were talking and had some wine, and they agreed after that to actually dedicate my first book. So if everyone buys my first book, this is a 2,000 volume on neurological complications of infections. So I know that you're ready to go, but please buy it. It's really a hot thing. It look great at your coffee table. But the big question I wanted to start with is, why does Bonnie Block, Elizabeth Taylor have in common? What could they possibly have in common? I'd like to share that to really start this little talk. So just so you don't know the three people, the one in the middle is actually the most beautiful of all. That's Bonnie. And it was tough to get a date when you have a looker like that. Even though I was her boss when we first got, I was worried that she would never go out with me. And well, show of hands, who thinks the one in the middle is the most beautiful? Let's go. Okay. So the person who gets it right, I will donate $5,000 to the Federation. While you can say, now please, if you give the right answer, I will give $5,000 to Bonnie is going to write the check right now. $5,000 to the graduation. Okay, you got 3 seconds. Any hands? Yeah, what is it? Oh, you know what it is. Okay, so this is the answer. This is the answer. As you know, all three married little Jewish guys with beards. As you know. But there's only one out of those three that has been married for nearly 40 years. So I think that's pretty good, right? Like little Jewish guys with beards. Very important. Maybe not anymore. After this, I'll be divorced. What's going on here? Okay. So I think if I had to put together my journey in Omaha, I got it from Helen Keller, which is really avoiding danger is not safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. So what does that mean? What did I do? When I came to Omaha, my friend said that Omaha's flat. And when you come to Omaha, you'll fall off the side and you'll drift to oblivion. And my previous mentor was the chair of Johns Hopkins Department of Neurology. He said, "You're a great guy, but we're probably not going to be seeing you anymore." And I remember having seen him 2 years ago when the University of Nebraska and our Department of Pharmacology beat Johns Hopkins in ratings. We were number 6 and Hopkins was number 8, so he said I knew that all the time, you know. Okay, so we started off as we built a program right in the middle of a courtroom, and we had to deal with this issue of clash of values, and I learned more about the Omaha Jewish community sitting in a courtroom in Lincoln, Nebraska, than anything else. Because when I went, I came as an observant Orthodox Jew, and who would be sitting next to me to try to console me, make me feel like it's going to be okay, they're going to put me in jail, this is what we're doing with embryonic stem cells at this time. And it was Rabbi Azrael from Temple Israel. And he said, you know something, Howie? I said, what? He said, you know something I hadn't known. You said, you know how the polio vaccine came around. I said, I really didn't know. Rabbi, tell me. He said, well, the polio vaccine was started by Dr. Saul Sabin, and it was developed by embryonic stem cells and fetal cells, and would save millions of lives. And then he sat with me in that courtroom and afterwards on the radio and TV during that time and consoled me. And this is the coming together of the Omaha community. It didn't matter what faith, position, this sense of camaraderie, a sense of community, a sense of direction. This is something really unbelievable. And only in Omaha, only our federation can really attest to being one community. It wasn't easy. When you call the immoral research, I love this when they picketed my house, and as my wife remembers, the kids were crying, they were standing outside in the immoral research, they're drumming, and I went to the guy. Unfortunately, my picture was never in the paper, and he said, you know, this is a problem, you shouldn't be picketing the house. He said, well, you don't understand, you don't know that guy, Dr. Gendleman. He's a really bad guy. And I said, well, I've met him a couple times. I can tell you, he's a really good guy. I said, he said, you don't know, we're having an argument about how good Dr. Gendleman was. I said he was great and wonderful. And I remember when they were picketing, we put our Passover tables outside, we put all the kids' toys. While everybody was watching the picketing, we had a great yard sale, which was illegal in our community. But we raised all the money, and unfortunately none of it went to the Federation, but it did go to the synagogue, so I think that's good, right? But the moral research that came, but great things happened too with the help of the community. We spent a semester at the Weizmann Institute. There are many awards and positions and accolades that came from our research, and we're very proud that the community stood behind us and stood with us, which is, again, without parallel that we saw. Ultimately discovered of a vaccine that targets Parkinson's disease, and when we were hurting with the community, and I never remember, we were at Alan Baer's house. Everybody remember Alan Baer? Everybody remembers Alan Baer. He's a great guy. A little crazy, but so am I. And I said, Alan, he was working out at the J, I said, Alan, I have a problem. I have a problem. He said, what's your problem? He said, well, they're picketing my house. They're taking the money away. The governor, a guy named Johans, you probably don't remember who he was, but they stopped the funding and support. And he said, don't worry, we're going to have a party at my house. We'll raise the money so you can continue the work in Parkinson's. And the Jewish community came together. We raised $500,000 in that evening. The Blumkins, Harriet Singer, others within this community came together and allowed us to continue this research, and it was the Jewish Federation, it was the Jewish community that made a significant difference and allowed us to move to phase 1 studies, which were quite successful, announced several months ago, and now a movement to expand our work in Parkinson's and HIV. But ultimately, if we can hold this for a second, and I'd like to just end with a story that I think really highlights really what we're all about. And that's not just what I'm about, which, you know, as a doctor for so many years, and here for over 20-some years, even before, as a scientist, a teacher, and an educator. But we try to, as Sharon said very eloquently, thank you, Sharon, is that we're trying to make a difference. That when we live our life, whatever we do in our community, we want to make it a little better. And when we save a life, and we influence a life, we save the world. So I want to just share with you one story that really came from this research, that they were protesting and saying what we're doing, it's terrible, it bears welcome, the preamble to GlaxoSmithKline. We're developing a drug that penetrated the brain and reversing of dementia associated with HIV. And I was called to Creighton University for a moment, and they, a very high level in the Catholic Church, said, please see this patient. It was nearly 20-some years ago today, 2 decades today. And we came in. We diagnosed this young woman, then in her 20s, and clearly she had a dementing illness. She was given maybe a month to live. And through our research, we were able to change the outcome, to save the world. I haven't seen this woman since this time, and we saved her. I like to play her story because it really depicts not only who I am, what I think I am or want to be, but it depicts all of us, whether who we are, what we do, in terms of giving back and to making a difference in the world. Can we start it?
Well, I wasn't quite sure when I was speaking or why I was speaking, but now I know after listening to all of you. Dr. Gendleman asked me to speak about my life and what I've been doing lately. And I wish I could tell you my life is very exciting, but in fact it is very ordinary. I'm sure it's not unlike your lives. However, after listening to some of you speak, maybe your lives are a little bit more exciting than mine. Some of my more ordinary experiences lately have been, like millions of other people last week, I bought a Powerball ticket. However, I lost. I watched the Seinfeld series finale whenever it was on, and like millions of other Americans, I was a little disappointed in it. While playing golf in a par 3 hole, I got the tee shot right on the green. However, it took me 10 putts to get in. So I had to take an 11. And as a teacher, I'm worse than my students. I'm counting down the days until summer vacation. And by the way, there are 9 days left. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that my life is pretty ordinary. But don't get me wrong, I appreciate my ordinary life. I'm grateful to have my ordinary life. However, what is not ordinary about my life is a little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with having the AIDS virus. And Dr. Gendleman is the one who diagnosed me. And when he diagnosed me, I was in the advanced stages. In fact, at one point, my viral load was off the charts at over 1 million. And he said that if my medicine didn't start kicking in soon, I would probably be dead within 2 months. Unlike most AIDS patients, dementia was the only real symptom that I had. And the dementia did some really crazy things to me. For example, I would walk into rooms or walk in around my house and look for rooms that weren't there. I would wash dishes in the sink, only to find out there were no dishes or water in the sink. I would take my students to lunch 2 hours early, and then when it was actually time for lunchtime, I would be late. And I only remember these things because of what my family and friends have told me. For about 4 to 6 months of my life, I can remember very little. There's one thing that I would like to point out about this whole experience. It took me 5 doctors before I was finally diagnosed. The first 4 doctors either diagnosed me with something that I did not have, or they did not diagnose me. In fact, one doctor said that my ordinary life was causing too much stress, and why don't you come back in a month and we'll see what else we can do. They never asked me if I thought that I might have AIDS or would you like to be tested. And had I been given the opportunity, I would have said, well, no, I don't think I have AIDS, but go ahead and test me. That extraordinary time in my life happened about 14 months ago. And lots has happened since then, both on the medical end and in my personal ordinary life. Dr. Gendleman continues to monitor my progress and my condition, and I continue to maintain my ordinary life. I do not have a medical mind, and there's a lot going on there that I will never understand. I do know one thing, that if it wasn't for all of you who understand it, that I wouldn't be here today. And for that, I will be forever grateful that I'm able to live.
my extraordinary, ordinary life. Thank you, Dr. Gendleman.
The reason I stayed on stage was not because I was looking for the limelight, but because we have a special surprise for all of you. And that is the woman whose life Dr. Gendleman saved 22 years ago is sitting in the back of the theater. And I'd like to ask her to come forward and come up on stage.
You can give your speech again.
The tape broke, I was going to get up and finish it for you,
But I think in the end, this isn't a surprise. I think it's fair to say that the last time we saw each other was 20 years ago. I had moved on into research and development. My clinical care had went back, and I didn't really know what had happened up until this night. It's our first time together in 20 years. But it really brings home the issue of what we are and what we do, that an impact of 20 years ago, a diagnosis or an idea or a treatment or some love and caring can in fact change the world. So thank you for allowing me to change the world.